Good morning. My name is Rick Gleason, and I would like to thank you for tuning in to the heartbeat of worker health and safety. I'm here with my co host, Don King. We're going to be talking with you each month about safety and health issues as they relate to keeping workers protected on the job in the United States of America and maybe even other countries. We're coming to you from the Pacific Northwest OSHA Training Center, covering Washington, Alaska, Oregon, and Idaho right now. But first, since this is our first broadcast, I'd like to have our co-host, Don King, tell us a little bit about himself and his background and experience in safety and health. Don?
Well, good morning, Rick. Thank you for that. Yes, I'm Don King. I started in the safety and health business in the mid-70s. Was fortunate enough to be employed by a large brokerage firm out of New York that was just bought a firm in Hawaii. When I went to work for them, we had every industry one can imagine. So I had a great uh, advantage to go to every known type of industry. As we had hotels, we had airlines, we had fast foods, we had manufacturing plants, we had contractors. So it was really a wonderful experience, and that's where I started my safety career. I spent 20 plus years over in Hawaii. Then I came to the mainland and started working with larger contractors doing hospitals and high rises and done some wind farms in Iowa, worked on the dam. So I have a pretty varied background when it comes to safety and health.
So, Don, I appreciate you giving us a little bit of background, and we're going to be talking about some safety myths today as far as our topics. And each presentation, each month, we will have a different topic as it relates to worker health and safety. Uh, my background is from Butte, Montana. I went to Montana Tech there in their safety and health program, and had a chance to work for OSHA as an inspector in Montana. And then later moved out to Seattle and worked with OSHA in the regional office here in Seattle, in the area office in Bellevue, before moving to Washington State OSHA. In this state, they call it L&I, WSHA, DOSH, Washington State OSHA, and I got to work for them for about 10 more years. Now I just get to teach and train here at the University of Washington. By the way, we're in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health Sciences. And that's where our OSHA Training Center resides here, where we've been doing classes on behalf of OSHA for the last 20 years now. This is our 20th year. So, Don, why don't you start us off? We just thought today safety myths. So give us some thoughts and comments, and maybe we could discuss 3 or 4 of them today.
Good, I like that. When it comes to safety, everybody's got a little different idea and a thought on what is safety. So a gentleman that's been out in the industry for many years, he's actually a civil engineer by trade, and a PhD, put together these myths. His name is Dr. Ron Pritchard. So I want to give him the nod that this is his work we're quoting, so that he has the background to understand we're using his material with him being noted. So one of the myths that he had mentioned was that construction bids that do not put safety in their bid have the lower bids. Now that's really a bomb, because if you think about it, initially that may be true. They would have the lower bid if they did not include safety. However, after some real close examination, I think one could find that when you don't have safety in your bid, you're going to injure people, your quality of work is going to be less, you're going to have a lot of turnover, and your cost of your insurance is going to be extremely high. So therefore, in the end, when that individual may have got the low bid, it would have ended up costing the owner or the municipality much more money. So that is not a true statement.
Hey, that's such a good point, Don. And one of the things we're thinking of for one of our future broadcasts or podcasts, as it were, where we would discuss this whole aspect of experience modification factors, EMRs, or experience modification rates. And so that might be something we could really go into at one of our next podcasts, because there's so many components to that and how it's rated, and a little bit different here in Washington State, and how that all fits in with your bid and so
Absolutely,
forth.
it's critical information, and it's the temperature gauge that really is used for the baseline of their insurance costs. So it would be really good to talk about that.
Boy, that sounds great. That sounds great. One of the second myths that I was looking at there, and I had to really think about it for a minute. The myth was that OSHA compliance generates safety. And in a way, I always thought that was true, being an OSHA and Washington State OSHA inspector for many years. I always hoped that was true,
Yes.
but it turns out that you need to do a lot more than just OSHA compliance to be safe on the job. So much of OSHA deals just with unsafe conditions. And so we can cover every belt and pulley and chain and sprocket and revolving shaft, and that's fine. But it seems like also a lot of our accidents and incidents and injuries deal with unsafe acts. So we have to bridge that gap where we have a true, effective, motivational safety program where people want to follow the rules, know the rules, be trained in the rules, and it's not all just about OSHA compliance, but a much broader version of establishing a safety and health culture in your organization. I know we've talked many times that could also be one of our future topics as we come up in the future here.
So. Yeah, what's the real role of OSHA in the workplace, and why do we think they're a boogeyman? I think your point's well taken, Rick. That one time to the woodshed does not mean that you're now going to be a good boy. It only means that you were punished for something, and you will try not to do it again. So there's a lot of room in that, and a lot of discussion. I think we could talk about that for some time.
Absolutely. And for many small employers, they may never see OSHA. OSHA has enough manpower to maybe go out to each place of employment once every 100 years. Now, they make the larger employers, but if you're a small employer, you may not see OSHA. Certainly in Washington State, they have more inspectors per capita, and they have a higher risk or higher chance of being inspected. But don't wait for OSHA. And safety and health has to begin within your own organization from the top down. And so, Don, you got another myth you might bring up for us?
This one I thought was kind of funny in a way. It's safety programs will solve the problems. So back when I started in the business, people didn't even have a safety program. So what happened was some clever people would put together a very expensive book and call it a safety program, and for some money you could obtain that. The part that became really funny was we would often walk into a shop and we'd say, "Do you have a safety program?" "Oh, yes, we do." And they would proudly present this book, but the name on the cover was not their company. And I would say to them, "That's really a nice book." And they said, "Yeah, we've worked on that real hard," and so on and so forth. So again, unfortunately, people were under the distinct impression if you had a safety program, you were in the run. But we know many times we have talked to people who have an excellent written program, but they do not have what is necessary to drive a safety program. And that is a commitment of top management that's going to say, we are going to do this. And the reason we're going to do it is because I don't want anybody hurt. And it's good business. And that way everybody will be employed in my company and we'll move forward. The interesting part that the buzzword nowadays is a safety culture. And I think that, like every buzzword, as soon as it gets out there, people say, "Oh yes, we have a culture. My people are very safety conscious." I always get a kick out of that term. My people are safety conscious, and I say to them, "What does that mean? That they're awake, or does it, So anyway, that's the myth of having a written program.
Hey, that makes so much sense. And there are many codes and regulations that require that you have a program in writing for respirators and lockout, tagout, and accident prevention. But that's just kind of putting everything together. Bottom line is you still have to train your employees, you still have to audit, you still have to follow all of the policies and procedures you have in writing. So that's just the very beginning, not the end, as it were.
Right, right.
And one of the last safety myths I wanted to look at was relating to OSHA statistics. And so, for instance, this year of all employers on average in the United States, there were 3.3 OSHA recordables per 100 full-time workers per year. So that's 3.3% of our workforce on average getting hurt or injured that have met the OSHA definition of an OSHA recordable, which is medical treatment beyond first aid. So we'll see many
That's
companies.
the Washington State.
That's the average for the whole country combined.
Okay.
Construction's a little higher.
Right, right. Okay, that's the average for industry.
All average.
Together. Okay.
Banks, restaurants a little lower,
Yes.
and so forth.
Right.
And so what we see is companies saying, "Oh, we are only at 2.0 OSHA recordables, so we are so safe. We are less than average. We're better. We're safer as a result of that." And what that really means, though, that's the things that have happened that are unsafe. You haven't really come up with how many good things you're doing, how many safe actions you are. And I think later on we're going to look at this far greater in all the statistics and the leading indicators that we may have that we can utilize for safety versus these lagging indicators. That's just the whole last year of how many defects you had, if you will. When there's an accident, we've done something wrong, it seems like, from that standpoint.
Yeah. So what is the difference between leading indicator and lagging indicator?
It would be nice to have things that we could look forward to establish our safety program from here on, and our positive, proactive, maybe things like where we were able to identify unsafe conditions or near misses where nobody got injured. Whereas I would define these lagging indicators as looking back over the last year for all those medical treatments beyond first aid, and we've recorded them and how many days away from work there were. So I would certainly call that a lagging.
So it's more like a historical data versus action that you've taken that is proactive to conditions on a site.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. I like that a lot. And so now, Don, I know that a lot of times you come up with some safety and health quotes or something that we can use as we wrap up our little brief segment here today. Things that somebody could take with us. Is there a quote of the day you could help us out with regarding safety?
You know, one of my heroes in the industry is Paul O'Neill, who was the former CEO of Alcoa Aluminum, and that man took on the safety as his mantra when he became president, and that's all he talked about was safety. And one of the great things he said that I heard in one of his talks was, if you really want people to believe you, you have to be painfully consistent. And to me, that kind of says it. All we're trying to accomplish in everything we do in safety is consistency. It seems to be the thing that gets us, but that's the quote for the day.
Boy, that's an excellent quote, and he's got the safety background really to verify that and to show that in the real world. He's applied that, right?
Yes, he has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Well, every month we'll be back on a short podcast in elements relating to worker health and safety. But again, this is Rick Gleason and Don King just coming to you from Pacific Northwest Center. And then in conclusion, Don, why don't you wrap us up here?
Well, I was going to say, what are we going to talk about next time? And maybe we ought to go to the history because when you really think about the history, it really is interesting to find out how did all this begin and kind of take people through the beginning and where we are now, but really talk about where do we want to go.
Boy, Don, that sounds great. I like that. So for our next podcast, we'll look at the history of safety and health and where we've come from. But your point, well taken, where we're going and where we want to be.
Where we want to be.
Thank you very much, and have a great, safe day.
Aloha to you all.
I was young and feisty, never did things by the book. Just let me get my toolbox, and I'll take myself a look. I climbed up on the dozer, and with my mechanic's pride, said, you can keep it running, friend, while I poke around inside. Shake hands with danger, meet a guy you ought to know. I used to laugh at safety, now they call me Three-Finger Joe.